Order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, good morning. Consideration of agenda items. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Mr. Chair.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Pohlmeyer, second by Commissioner Kruger. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Szymanski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wright. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Payment of the bills.
Mr. Chair, I move the payment of the bills.
Motion by Commissioner Szymanski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kruger. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. Payment of the bills of $73,248.59. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our COVID update. Megan, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
everybody.
Good
Good to be
morning,
with
Megan.
you this morning. Hope everybody had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Well,
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Megan, this is your first time presenting in this room.
Yes.
Pull the microphones close so we can
Best you can.
pick up the audio as best we can.
Okay. I'm a little taller than
Thank
the
you.
average bear, so I'll do my best to speak into the microphone. Thank you. From a public health standpoint, COVID update for today, we are at 93 cases in McLeod County cumulatively as of the close of business Monday. We have increased 23 cases in the last 14 days. So we continue to have a pretty rapid climb in our case number here in McLeod County. If we maintain that rate, we will likely hit an inauspicious milestone of 100 cases by the end of this week. So we are not looking forward to hitting that milestone. I think, if we can continue in McLeod County to encourage people to socially distance, and I know it's controversial, but there is a lot of science around the mask wearing. We can continue to encourage folks to do that, and as county officials, I'll try to be good role models of mask wearing in public. I think that really will have a positive impact on our transmission rate here locally. The other big news from a public health standpoint or news this week is that the mandated testing of our long-term care facilities is starting this week. So actually today, our first assisted living is having the National Guard on site doing their testing, and our staff is performing a liaison role. So we're kind of the local person on site that's the liaison between the National Guard testing unit and the actual facility that's having their testing done. So we've got one today, and the way it goes is they test every 7 days until they've done 3 testings. So they'll test today, and then in 7 days, they'll test everybody who turned out negative the first time. And then for a 3rd time, they'll test everybody who has remained negative, both staff and residents of the facility. And then the National Guard's done with that facility, and they move on to the next one. So as I said, we'll have 3 more of those done before the end of the month here around the county. So with that just pretty much wraps up my public health update, unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Megan?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ron.
Megan, testing in the long-term care facilities, they're testing all the staff and all the residents as well, or do we understand that correctly? Or?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, that's correct. All staff and all residents would be tested.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
also have a question. Do we have any hospitalized cases in McLeod County, or how many?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I'd have to go check on our spreadsheet. It's pretty fluid. It changes on a day-to-day basis, but I can get back to you with that. We have an average of 1 to 2 in the hospital at any given time. I don't know as of today whether that's the case, but I can certainly follow up after the meeting with that information.
I realize, I've been a numbers guy all along here, and I realize there's more testing, so you're naturally going to get more cases, but I just like to coordinate all the figure, if there's hospitalized or where these cases are and what age group they're in.
Absolutely. Hospitalization is a good judge of the broadness of the spread overall. So
And the
that's a good
age
number.
too is really helpful.
Absolutely. I was planning on maybe having a further discussion at our next Health and Human Services Committee with some more statistics about the different age groups that are affected, the hospitalization rates over time, so you would have some more data to work off of.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Megan.
Okay.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
Kevin? Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just here to update you quickly on kind of our Fema reimbursement throughout this process. It is getting very labor intensive, kind of detailed information, so we did submit our information to the state. They approved it and sent it on to FEMA. FEMA replied back with a couple of pages of information that they need, so basically what we have to do is we submitted documentation for April and May, and those totals, I think I spoke at a previous meeting, were about $25,000 or $23,000, $24,000 in there in expenses. We're not sure if they're going to be 100% eligible at this point, but what we're told is FEMA's needing more information. So based on the information that we provided FEMA initially was what was purchased, let's say Formula 409 was purchased, what it is per unit and what it is for the total. We have copies of the invoices, and now they need information of why it was purchased, what is it being used for, who's using it, and where it's being used. So we're spending a lot of time documenting this between County Administration, Finance, and myself. So in April to May, so far I only have like 8 to 10 hours into it, which isn't a lot. But as we move forward, we're finding that we're going to needing more documentation throughout this process. So I would like to just kind of update you with that. I don't have a formal recommendation at this point of how we want to proceed, but we can proceed down this road, or maybe we can work with administration to maybe see if we can use some other kind of funding sources, such as that CARES Act funding. I know there's some counties in southwest Minnesota that are actually using that for their eligible expenses and stuff. So I just kind of wanted to at least brief you that we're still working on it. We're still submitting information. I'm going to be getting information to FEMA this week and get the details that they need. So another thing that they did actually mention, and it talks about increased operating costs. And I'll just read this so I make sure I get it right. It says, increased operating costs, operating a facility or providing a service are generally not eligible even when directly related to the incident. So if we have increased operating costs, even though it's COVID eligible, it may or may not be eligible. So I just kind of wanted, this is information that just came out in the last couple weeks. So, so we'll continue to submit what we can and proceed down this path.
All right, any questions for Kevin?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Kevin, I have one. With the additional time you're spending accumulating the information to file the documents, is any of that recoupable, or is that part of the additional cost of just our cost?
At this point, I do it during my regular scheduled day, and usually the overtime, it would be eligible for those wages, but the straight time probably would not at this point through the FEMA,
Okay.
the Federal Emergency Management Programs.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you'll receive detailed information about that tomorrow,
Okay.
Commissioner. If it's budgeted for, no, but like he said, overtime, yes. And as most of you know, we're having a workshop tomorrow to go over the CARES Act, specifically the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which will alleviate the issues that Kevin's talking about, because the FEMA documentation is much different than what Minnesota Management and Budget is requiring. They will have a very simple form that will start it will start after this month, because we had to sign a certificate, get that released. We'll get our money after July 20th, and then things will be a little bit easier.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Sheila, anything to add?
I was just going to note that our employees are continuing to manage their space responsibly and try and be at work when it makes the most sense. We have a lot of employees that are still working from home in Health and Human Services, which makes sense right now. And that department's been working on a reopening plan that they sent to us yesterday. That's being reviewed. Our services are all open and accessible. Connie Kurtzwig's team has been doing a good job at the North Complex with the trailer and making sure that people can get their vehicle registrations, their licensing. That is very busy over there, so if you do go, plan to spend a few hours, right? But other than that, things are open, and I believe that our employees are doing a very good job. So thank you to all of them.
All right, any questions for Sheila? Otherwise, we're going to move on to a public hearing scheduled for 9:10, which we're exactly at. So I'll take a motion to open this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Wright. Second by Commissioner Kruger. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mark, go ahead.
Good morning, gentlemen. So this is a continuation of a public hearing from the Joint Planning Board at their meeting in June. And the reason for that is property owner notice did not go out, and therefore, to meet the statutory requirement, we are continuing that public hearing, and we have sent those property owners out. They did receive those. So with that being said, we are here today to consider approval of a conditional use permit, JP20-C2 for Alexis Guthrie for a commercial outdoor recreation area with 4 travel trailer motorhome units. The tenants of the camp trade service to assist with the upkeep of the property, located within 7.23 acres of Government Lot 3, Section 34 in Acoma Township, located in the boundaries of Hutchinson Joint Planning Area, HJPA. The Board of the Hutchinson Joint Planning unanimously recommended approval at their June 17, 2020 meeting with the following conditions. Number 1, no more than 4 units travel trailer motorhomes be allowed in the designated area. Number 2, an 8-foot-high wood fence be constructed, erected to screen and minimize noise to the neighbors on the south and east side of the designated area. Number 3, gray water shall be treated if running water is hooked up to the travel trailer motorhomes. So with that being said, there is a mini BIF porta potty out there where the residents do use that for the black water. It is not something that they are utilizing the house on the property or containment in those units. They do utilize that porta potty. The gray water piece, we put that in there so if they are using hand washing sinks, that type of thing, can't run that on the ground if you have water hookup to any of those facilities. So it has to be potted and then put into that porta potty or in a containment unit pumped into a system. And with that being said, there wasn't a lot of discussion obviously at that joint planning board due to the neighbors not being present. We do have some neighbors that are here. Alexis Guthrie is the applicant. She is present today, so if you do have questions for her and if there are any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. This is obviously in the district that I represent, and I go by there a lot. It looks a lot better than it has in a lot of years. But I do know there's some concerns from some neighbors, and we can talk about that. I was up there this morning, in fact, and took a look at it. I think it's something that I want to approve, but we need to address these neighbors' concerns here. So, Ms. Guthrie, if you'd like to address the board, or do you have anything you'd like to talk to us about, or did Mark cover it?
Mr. Chair, if I may, and
Yep.
I should read one more thing for the record prior to us
Very good.
having testimony. I did receive a letter last Wednesday from the area, and I'll just read that for the record. We, the undersigned residents within a quarter mile of property located at 19928 210th Street, Hutchinson, Minnesota, respectfully request the conditional use permit requested by Alexis Guthrie be denied. The use of this area as proposed is not in conformance with the residential area surrounding it. It would also set an unwelcome and unwanted precedence in Acoma Township. As it started, it was occupied on weekends during fall hunting season. It has evolved into almost a year-round residence for some of the occupants. As it exists today, it has a depressing effect on the property values and ability to sell these properties. In the recommendations, there would be an 8-high wood fence would be constructed, erected. Would this be a solid fence? Question mark. New wood construction? Question mark. Painted or stained? Question mark. Maintained by whom? Question mark. It also states if approved, staff would suggest the following conditions. Are suggestions enforceable? Question mark. Gray water should be treated if running water is hooked up to the travel trailer motorhomes. Shouldn't all gray water be treated? Question mark, respectfully. And then on the back side, and I did present that to you today, there's a number of signatures from area residents that had concerns with this request. But I also did receive a phone call on the 29th of June from a resident out there who absolutely is in favor of this, has no problems with that, has noted over the last few years that the property has significantly been cleaned up. Mr. Doug Martin is the resident that lives out there, and he has absolutely no issues with this request and considers it to be an asset. So with that being said, I will turn it back to the board.
Mark, before you step away, can you address the fence concerns in this letter?
Yeah, so one of the things that came up, and we talked about that, The residents that are currently using that, occupants, if you will, of that camp, had brought that to the attention of staff that they would be willing and would like to screen, to do what they can to be in compliance and to create a buffer between the neighbors to the south and what they do. They would like to build a wood fence, and at the joint planning board, we discussed, what that would look like. So I will be working with the residents if approved, with the applicants if approved, to build that fence. We are thinking something 8 foot high, wood on both sides, staggered dog-eared boards so that the wind can get through there, make it look nice. As far as painted or stained, that's up to the discussion of the board, consideration of the board, if you have a preference, or maybe the neighborhood, but it's a matter of mitigating the aesthetic piece, so they can't see them, and then also to mitigate some of the noise. I've been out there and spoke with those individuals twice. In the packet, as you'll note, they're all senior veterans, and there doesn't seem to be a noise issue. There hasn't been any complaints as of date with the Sheriff's Department in regards to the noise issues. So they typically turn in fairly early. So again, the fencing part, which was a concern, was really for the mitigating the appearance part, and I'm open to whatever the board's wishes are, but we can definitely make something presentable.
All right. And just so you know, the mic, gotta kind of get after it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, gentlemen. Again, my name is Alexis Guthrie, and I am the owner of the property in question. I just want to give you a brief overview in case you hadn't had a chance to review the packet itself and what this is and what we're actually trying to do. The way that this started was something that my grandfather started decades ago. And he had some people come out and stay and hunt, and then when he passed, my dad just carried it on, and then when my dad passed several years ago, then I just kept it. I mean, they're good friends of ours. There was no reason for us to say, okay, you guys need to be out. And it does consist of 3 RV trailers and 1 self-powered RV. The self-powered RV is moved off at part time of the year, which in the summer he moves it to some other camp, like a campground, and then just moves it back. And then in exchange for that, because we have the trailers out there, they come out, they help maintain the property, as you said, Joe, with the helping it make it look nicer, and they want to make sure they mow and help with the upkeep on that. And the gentlemen themselves, the hunters, the youngest is at 62 and the oldest is at 75. And the group does consist of 3 military veterans and a retired carpenter, and we have included some statements in our packet if you had questions on those. None of them are considered partiers, so there isn't a question of late night, wild parties, loud noises, anything like that. So in regards to their facilities, they had built just a non-permanent deck just for ease of use, and there was also a tank that they put in because that was for the gentleman who is 75 years old. He said he just can't lift the tanks. Again, non-permanent, and he is fully disabled U.S. Army combat veteran, so that's why he is needing to do that. And in regards to the black gray water, there is no running water for any of the trailers. They're not hooked up to any of our services on site. They do have access to a hose if they need regular water. Anything that is gray water is either put into the porta potties themselves, or in the case of the trailers, put into the trailers, taken off site, pumped securely off site. Gray water is not an issue. So we are just planning on having the 4 trailers. This is not an RV park. This is never going to be an RV park, and that was not the intent. It's just for people to come out, enjoy the hunting. It is not a year-round camp. They do come out, they stay, they leave. It's not year-round, they're not staying there, there's nobody living on site. It was their suggestion to build the fence, and we obviously don't have any issues with that. But as far as painting, staining, that shouldn't matter because we're not in a housing association, and we certainly don't tell the neighbors what color to paint their house or how to treat their property. So obviously we would maintain it, but staining, painting should be a moot point. So again, this is just something that we want to continue. This isn't anything that just cropped up in the last few years. It's been going on for decades. So we're just asking to allow the gentleman to come out, to use it as their recreation area, use it for hunting, and just help maintain the property. Do you gentlemen have any questions for me?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna try to pick your paint color for your fence. I think it's just meant to be maintained, and
Right.
I think that was the point of that, and I think we all know that. So, I have a few more things, but do any of the other commissioners have questions?
Mr. Chair, just the one
Yes.
question. On that number 22, that's just that little length of fence there? That's what we're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the proposed area where the fencing would be.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ron?
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Is the permanent residence on the farm site, is that occupied?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so there is a,
There is a presence there outside of the hunters.
okay, so the,
Yes.
was that occupant also part of maintaining the property?
Yes,
or-
very much
Okay.
so.
All right. So these people that are using the campsites then are also assisting?
They're
with
assisting,
property
they're helping out.
maintenance? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just, I sit on the Joint Planning Board, but I was not. I just want to let everybody know I was not able to attend the meeting that night. Generally, I try not to say a whole lot so that the townships and the city can have conversation. So I just want to make it clear that I was not able to attend or voted on this. But I'm hoping that today that we can find a way to look at the conditions and be able to approve this.
All right, we'll have a couple more things, but I'm gonna open up to the other property owners, okay? So,
Sure.
does anybody else wish to address the board regarding this? Mark, if you could, is there any other similar type of projects or type of condition permits in the county regarding this?
Periodically, we have gone through some of these. The last one that I can remember that we had to go through, similar to this, was on Silver Lake. It was an applicant there on the west side. If I remember right, 10 units that are out there. But we don't typically see these. Typically, they're on a recreational type of a lake. They're classified as a planned unit development through the DNR language, where they can get as many of these units in on a small piece of property to cash flow the use. This particular situation, I was unaware of that. I mean, having been in this position, and with the office for a number of years, I was unaware that it was there, and the township had called and reported that because they had a concern, not they had a concern reported to them. So again, the way I look at these issues, if it's been ongoing and we can mitigate those concerns through conditions, then we should give them that opportunity to try. And with that being said, a conditional use permit, we always have that opportunity to call it back in if they aren't meeting the conditions that we set forth, so.
Yeah, and fortunately or unfortunately, I go by that a lot, so we'll know whether those conditions are met. Dale, you had some questions before. Was Mark able to address those to you? Yeah, okay, good. Does anybody else wish to address the board before we potentially take some action? Mark, you're comfortable with the conditions that are set?
I am.
All right.
Just a question, Mr. Chair, on the conditions. Is there an expectation date put on the construction of the fence at all?
There was discussion in regards to that. We had originally talked October. It is the wishes of the camper, the tenants, to get that done sooner than later, so we certainly can put a date on that. They were waiting to see what the outcome of the request was prior to them beginning, but yeah, I mean, it's something that we definitely could attach with that condition number 2 to have it erected by a certain date.
I guess I would just propose that we come up with a very sensible date on that, so that obviously there are some concerned landowners, and we want to make sure and let them know that there is a date that we have agreed upon that the fence needs to be constructed by.
All right.
Does the applicant have a recommendation? or anybody?
What works for you to have the fence?
Initially, at the joint planning meeting, we had addressed the fact of possibly a year from the date of this meeting, just because of the current conditions that are going on that could possibly prevent us from building a fence sooner. It would give us a little bit of buffer in time to be able to do that instead of trying to cram that in a short period of time.
I get your explanation. I'd sure like it done quicker than that, though. But that does make sense.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mark, I'm searching for some answers here. Is there any limitation on how many units can be placed on this parcel? Or are we capping it at the 4 existing units?
That is correct. The request was for 4, yep, and that was the wishes of the applicant.
All right. And as these current occupants of these camping facilities, as life progresses, they may not be able to use it. Can it be handed down to a next generation?
No, and that is something that the applicant can speak to. Her and I have had this discussion. A conditional use permit does stay with the property, and it becomes null and void if that conditional use permit is not used for a period of 1 year. It is her wishes that this continues on with this group, but once this group no longer is able to occupy and use that, it would not be handed down.
Okay.
So this is an issue that really, in due time, it's something we'll consider and I'll bring to you as a workshop item. But an interim use permit where we can sunset issues like this would be a perfect example of this type of a use. But this is a conditional use permit. So with that being said, we have really two fallback options. Is number one, we have a right to call it back in if they're not meeting the conditions, and this gets a little bit looser than what was intended for. But number two is the applicant has stated that it won't continue on past this group, and therefore we're relying on that, and that the use will become null and void, more than likely because it won't be used for a period of 1 year.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I do have,
November 1st.
I would echo Commissioner Wright, but I would hope we could work through this too. It seems like everybody's agreeing on the conditions that are here, and obviously I'm a property rights guy, plus I see 3 of these are veterans. And I would hope, like Mark has alluded to, I mean, the conditional use permits can be revoked, so if people keep it up, I don't know where people are supposed to go anymore. I mean, they own this property. I mean, we could be talking about 100 steers, I guess, and I don't, it just really upsets me that you can't use your property for what it's, to your, as long as it doesn't endanger your neighbors. I just don't see a problem with it. But
All right, I'm going to throw this out there. I move to approve with the conditions, but the fence constructed by November 1st, noting that if it's not, you can come back to the board and we can address those questions and concerns, okay? All
I'll
right,
second it.
all right. Second by Commissioner Kruger. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Are you adding the other conditions provided also, or are you just using the one condition?
No, all of them.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we
No,
have that
but the
clear.
addition to the fence.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I mean, just, it's because of I'm sure it's because of the COVID stuff, and I think we have to, really take that into consideration.
Any further discussion? And again, if there's any concerns, let me know. I'll be by there a lot. Just flag me down, okay? Hearing no further discussion, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
All right. All right. You have another item, Mark?
I believe so.
Oh, just a second. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Wright, second by Commissioner Kruger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, sorry, Mark.
No, that's okay. So 2 more items here. First one is to accept the McLeod County grant application for aquatic invasive species AIS funds to be distributed. We submitted this at a workshop early part of June, so that application is just back in front of you. and it's just a form. I would ask for you guys a motion to approve or accept this grant application that we can use to work with our lake associations and our resource groups in the area to be able to tackle the AIS issue that we do have.
Mark, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mark, why are we, I mean, and I kind of get it, but we have to do this in two steps. We have to move for the application and for the disbursements of funds. I see.
Yeah, and the reason for that is if you look at the application, we do have some criteria in regards to how we distribute that funding. So with that being said, I just would like a motion to accept the application form itself with those criteria on there, and then if approved, we can get into the second item.
I would move on the application, Mr. Chair.
Motion on item A
Second.
by Commissioner Kruger, second by Commissioner Szymanski. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. So item number 2 then is we did get a request from the Bell Lake Association, and they are requesting $2,030 from our AIS funds, and those funds would be paid out to that lake association upon receipt. They have 1 year to provide those receipts and have us pay out. And the purpose of the request was they would like to hire Limno Aquatic Science, and they will survey and treat at least 0.25 acres of Bell Lake with hardball and aquatic herbicide, and that was to be done by the end of June 2020. Number 2, they would like to purchase AIS signage to be installed at the Petenburg Park landing. The Lake Association will work closely with the Petenburg Park supervisor during sign installation. That also will be installed. That was originally intended for June 2020, but they are waiting for approval from this prior to them purchasing that signage. And this request does meet the minimum requirements. They are putting forth $790. It is required to have a 10% match, so they do meet that requirement. So with that being said, they are asking for approval of $2,030 for a total project cost of $2,820.
I'll move to approve it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Szymanski. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Government Center update. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Quick update on the budget, and then I'll let Sam speak a little bit about schedule, because that's, like I've always said, it's the fun part. Budget, not a lot's changed. I know I came to you guys at the last board meeting. We were going through some UPS discussion, tasked us with seeing if we could improve upon that. I think we found a few more dollars in how we orchestrated that. So we're going to revisit that with our design team and make sure we got that dialed in a little bit better as requested. So that number that I presented is going to improve upon. Overall budget, contingency-wise, still sitting very good. We've used less than 14% of it right now, just in the incidental stuff, not counting the roofing piece, because we've actually taken all that on day one through that whole project budget. So generally speaking, the budget looks very good, and really schedule-wise, so I'll let Sam speak to that a little bit, but we're still moving along. Despite the environment and everything we've been blessed with, the team's been keeping it together, and it's been moving smoothly on that front. Questions on budget before I let Sam come up and speak a little bit about schedule and that progress?
Any questions for Travis? No. Okay, Sam, you're up. How come it's not done yet?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, everything's right on track for schedule. We're going to turn it over to you guys January 2021. I don't know if you've been by, you can see the changes outside of the building. Some of the paint's going on. A lot of the windows and paint will be finished in the next couple of weeks. Mechanically inside, we're about 95% complete. And got sheetrock and taping going to complete this month. And then finishes start in August. So tracking well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just want to add thank you to Sam. He's been very accommodating. We posted times for our employees to sign up for, to go through and check out where their new workspaces would be. The responses were overwhelmingly positive, and Sam did a really good job of organizing those tours during the team breaks and making sure that we could walk through at a safe time. It looks great. Things are coming along and moving. Every time that Liz and I stop by, it just looks better and better. So we're very happy with the progress in the building, and it continues to move along. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ron?
Mr. Chair, and maybe Sheila can answer this. As far as furniture and interior furnishings, are they going to be going in before the project is completely buttoned up, or are we going to wait till all the construction is done before we move in with furnishings?
We don't know delivery date for furnishings yet. I would assume that they'd wait until it was safe to move them in and not have a big mess
Yep.
as much
Wait
as
till
possible,
after
but
final
some of
clean.
the, yeah, and some of the central service areas, if you remember the map of the facility, there's some very good space for coming into the building and distributing those things out. So I don't see any reason we would move them in and before we would need to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then the only thing I'd add, and Sheila, this is probably for you, but I don't like getting lost in the weeds here, but we do get questions on how we're gonna move in that timeline. You don't have to do it today, but at some point, just lay that out to us, so, what's gonna be, are we gonna shut down? I know we're not, everybody's fearful we're gonna shut down for a week and move everything, right? So, at some point, let's get a communication out there how that's gonna work.
We're working with the department heads. Veteran Services is going to move first. It would obviously be the biggest coordination, I believe, for Connie's team to move into the building because of those services being so one-on-one and really not much of anything virtual for them to handle. So we keep talking about that, and Liz and I have it on our agenda for the schedule. But you'll have every detail.
Yep.
The public will as well. We have a lot of updates needed to our website, and that's going to coincide with the government center if everything goes as planned, so that it will be very clear for the public what's going on at all times.
All right, thank you for
That's our
that.
goal.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes,
I too, I just wanted to thank you guys for Sam and Travis. We've had a few hiccups, but we worked really well through them. And Sheila and Liz and Scott have worked really hard to get us the information, and it's worked pretty well with our engineer, with our architect, Pat. I mean, things have went pretty well. Real well, actually.
very good. Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Health and Human Services. Hello,
Hello.
welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we have Leah Lundgren with us from Social Services in case there's any questions on this item. I guess initially, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up on a question from earlier. We did check. We do have one person hospitalized currently. Unfortunately, they are hospitalized in the metro.
Okay.
So that tends to be a little more serious, unfortunately, if they get moved into the metro. The issue.
Quick question,
Yes.
is that because of their condition that they move? Okay, that's what I want to, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. The item we have before you on the agenda today was a little bit time sensitive, so we really weren't able to hold it until the Health and Human Services Committee. And this is basically a request. There's a formal process that chemical dependency treatment outfits have to go through to get essentially an endorsement from the Board of Commissioners if they would like to expand their services locally. This is a provider we've had a relationship with since 2011. At that time, they indicated they'd like to be providing residential and non-residential services, but they started with just the outpatient, and now they're ready to open a residential facility locally. At the time that they initially came to the board back in 2011, the board endorsed, the whole spectrum of treatment that they were wanting to provide. And since 8 years has elapsed since then, we just figured it was a good idea to come back to this current board and make sure that everybody's still comfortable with this plan going forward. They'd like to open a 16-bed residential facility for women who have co-occurring mental illness and chemical dependency treatment. It's really a need in our community. We have access to the service, but not locally, so it would be a great addition to our services here if everyone's comfortable with it moving forward.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I agree with you. I mean, we have obviously a need for this now. How does that, it's just a clarification question, but how does it benefit our local, we can't limit it to our local people, or can we? I mean, obviously, we're going to get inundated, being our location, by the overflows in the metro area, or even other counties for that matter, but I know it's a tough question, but I just kind of wonder.
Sure. Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioner, I think this particular provider has done a pretty detailed market study, and there is enough demand locally, and by locally I don't mean just McLeod, but surrounding counties to use the beds. Now, you're absolutely right. We can't put up a fence and You know, and nor would we want to. I know you're not suggesting that, but it's really a big advantage if people can be treated locally. We want them to be able to integrate back into the community and go back to a productive life, you know, when they're done with treatments. So I think that's the angle that we're coming at it from.
Are the logistics so that they can make it bigger? I mean, is it something, is this like a starting, it's just to that and that?
It has to be limited to 16 beds or fewer in order to be eligible for medical assistance. So,
Okay.
and I should clarify here that Prime West is going to be paying for most of this treatment, or people's private insurance would pay. I just wanted to be fully transparent. There's a small error on the board agenda request form where we indicated no cost to the county budget. And I'm sorry, I'm still learning these forms. It's actually budget neutral. So I should have been more clear about that. But there are a very small number of cases where the county still does pay for treatment. But if we didn't send someone to this new facility, we'd be sending them somewhere else. So it's pretty much a wash. So sorry about that error on the form.
So the goal would be to do good here so other communities would build this type, I mean, right, you know, back to the number of people that need them. Is that kind of the overall goal then, that we'd get more of these facilities through the countryside, through Minnesota, whatever?
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. This is treatment availability for women in general, residential treatment for women, co-occurring treatment for women. Those are all shortages across the state. So it really, if we could build up capacity in a bunch of communities around the state, that would be fantastic. This is a good start, I think.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I guess I would go ahead and move that we approve this letter to the commissioner. I think it's a very worthwhile, and it's something that we can do to help provide a service that is really budget neutral for us, and it hopefully will help some of our clients and constituents.
Motion by Commissioner Polmeyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Szymanski. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Megan, this is basically just for the county to endorse the concept. We're not approving a site location or anything of that nature yet. That may come back before us as the project progresses. But so really, we're just giving a stamp of approval that says we welcome the opportunity to host a site like this.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, it's technically what it's called as a statement of need. So really what the county board is evaluating is, do we have the need locally? And you're correct that it's not a site approval. The current corporate office for this provider is in Hutchinson, but they have not identified a location for the actual treatment, like where the house will be, where people will be getting treatment. They're still kind of shopping around for that at this point.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Megan.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Auditor Treasurer's Office. Good morning, Connie.
So today I have two items here. A, consider the adoption of Resolution 20CB-28 to ratify the delegation of McLeod County District 3 Commissioner Wright as the JD 15 Renville Sibley McLeod representative to adopt and ratify the findings in order to redetermine and appoint viewers and to constitute the joint meeting for the formation of the Joint Drainage Authority and fulfill all future McLeod County vacancies with the McLeod County Commissioner of District 3. So some history with this request. The Joint County Drainage Authority of Renville and Sibley counties for JD 15 initiated the proceedings to redetermine the benefits of JD 15, and during the pending proceedings received evidence from their appointed viewers that JD 15 Renville Sibley, in addition to benefiting properties in Renville and Sibley, also benefits properties in McLeod County. So in order to determine benefits in McLeod County, the Renville and Sibley Counties Joint Drainage Authority for JD 15 must form a new Joint County Drainage Authority to include at least one member from McLeod County. On February 25th, 2020, designated representative commissioners from Renville, Sibley, and McLeod counties met to adopt findings in order establishing the new Joint Drainage Authority, ratifying actions and directing further proceedings to formulate the Joint County Drainage Authority of Renville, Sibley, and McLeod counties for the new JD 15 Renville, Sibley, McLeod. Do you have
Mr.
any
Chair,
questions?
I would move to adopt Resolution 20 CB 28 and ratify Commissioner Wright as the representative for JD 15.
Motion by Commissioner Kruger. Was there a second? Second by Commissioner Polmeyer. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The second item is to consider adopting Resolution 20 CB 29 to transfer $21,389.67 from the general fund elections account and designate the money to a special revenue account for voting equipment and supplies. Administration expenses of the presidential nomination primary were included in the 2020 election budget. McLeod County was reimbursed $21,389.67 by the Secretary of State for administering the election. There remains a need to update McLeod County voting equipment and supplies, so I would like to use these funds at a future date, more than likely on assisted voting devices. So please consider the approval to transfer, as of June 30th, $21,389.67 from the general fund election budget to the special revenue account designated for voting equipment and supply purchases.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Connie, I'm just curious about the date, June 30th, 2020. Does that have any effect on this, or?
It really doesn't.
It's just the current.
Just so that it gets done.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair, for
Second.
20 CB 29.
Motion by Commissioner Szymanski, second by Commissioner Kruger. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Connie.
All right, John.
Morning.
One item for you today is to consider approval of a quote we received from Subsurface Incorporated. They're out of Moorhead, Minnesota, for culvert rehabilitation on 7 locations around the county. Estimated fee for that work is $149,305 from our construction budget. Their fees are based on a lump sum mobilization fee and then the linear price per foot of the repair and or the number of joints and grouts that grout that is required for one of the locations. 5 of those locations are on County Road 19. One of them is on County Road 73. It's not 72, it's 73. And one is on County Road 15 north of Glencoe. And the primary repair for the majority of those 6 of those locations is the cured in place pipe, CIPP, it's ultimately called, ultraviolet cured. So basically, it's a liner, a fiberglass liner that is pulled through the culverts. First they go through and jet the culvert, then they camera it, and they pull the liner through, and they blow it up with air, and there's an ultraviolet cure light train that goes through and cures that out. And that fiberglass liner is very thin, very smooth, you get better flow characteristics. The life of that, if the concrete or the metal were to rot away, they say that liner is in place and structurally sufficient for basically a new culvert. And the goal or the reason for going this route is to, we can do it under traffic, and then you don't get the future settlements like you would if you had a new pipe settlement and so forth. So, like I mentioned there, the culverts are in need of rehab. They have joint separation, sediments going in, plugging the culverts, and then we can do the repairs under traffic.
Mr. Chair, where is County Road 73?
73 is that section of road just west of County Road 12, between 19 and 12, northwest of Hutch, between the 2 lakes.
Township?
Yep.
Yeah, real high water on both sides.
Thank you.
Clear, yeah. Right by along the lake there, right?
Yep.
How does that, Mr. Chair, how does that interfere, John? Can they work in those kind of conditions, or do they have to isolate it, or how does that work with water?
That particular one is farther east of the lake, so that one, they don't have to coffer dam or nothing. So all of these, there's one that they'll have to do some coffer damming on, that bigger one on that 60-inch. Otherwise, they're all dry enough now where they, a little dike, and then they can work and remove the dike.
So that when they run the cameras through, they have to kind of look at the condition to actually get a light, to I mean, you must have to meet some criteria to meet the life of a new culvert, right? Is that? how
Well,
does
I
that
think
work?
they're cameraing it mainly to document their work too.
Okay.
And then we get a film of that whole thing when they're done.
Thank you.
Ron, do you have something?
All right, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John. This morning, I had also notified your department of a couple other road conditions out in my district where I drove out there this morning and the crew was already there waiting to make the patches. So,
yeah.
but I'm wondering if, would these qualify for this type of repair as well?
We'd have to look at them, certainly. I think in the future, what I'd like to do is, we've talked about it as a district with other neighboring counties, but put together a large, a big package where we could bid one
Sure.
big one out with everybody. Because there's certainly more than these 7 around the county that need attention.
And-
So potentially they could, I guess we'd have to look at them.
Sure, okay. All right, but I do appreciate the highway department being out there on the spot this morning.
Yeah.
An hour after I reported that they were there, so thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
John, on these, and I know we've gone through this with other ditch systems and culverts that are at the right settings. Are we checking these before so that they're at the proper settings so we don't have to go through and rework these again later on?
These, my understanding, I gotta look at them, these are all on, they're not on ditch system.
Okay,
These are just normal highway centerline culverts.
okay. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah, I
not,
don't believe any of these are on the ditch system,
okay,
but yes, we would do that.
okay, thank you.
And I think it's huge if we can avoid that settling issue.
Yeah, no
kidding.
You know, we fight that, that's awful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Just I have a question, Mr. Chair, just on the language of the agenda item, it says estimated fee of $149,000, so you don't want to approve that number because that could move pending,
It could move up, I mean, the length of a foot or two either way, you know how they measured it, by the time they get in and do the precise measurement, it could be a foot or two either way. The big one on the 60-inch culvert is, that one is repaired so much per joint, but also based on the pounds of grout that they put back in it. And that could go, depending on the size of the void, when they find it, up or down. So I'd hate to do a not to exceed 149.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do a not to exceed 160,000, if you
Okay.
want to do that, but otherwise, that's why it shouldn't be that number.
okay, that's why I was asking that, I didn't want to accidentally box you in on a number that we
Yeah.
unforeseen, so.
All right. Anything else for John?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the quote from Subsurface. Mike, do we really need to have a dollar figure on?
Yes, you ought to
Okay.
have a not to exceed 160,000 if that's what he's
With a not to
comfortable with.
exceed 160, you're comfortable with that, John? That number? Okay.
Motion by Commissioner Wright, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Szymanski, any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
John, before you leave, can you give me a little update on Morningside? I know that they've got pushed out a little bit. Are we still on track for another week or two, or?
Last I heard was mid-July to late July. That was the last schedule we received from them. As far as the other projects, County Road 54, paving, that's been completed. Our guys put I believe they hydro seeded it last week, the few driveways. 19, they were heading out there today to do hydro seeding around the rest of the residential areas. Otherwise, that one's complete. Safety project on 7 between Stewart and Hutchinson, that one's been completed. Our safety edge line on the concrete roads last couple of years, County Road 3 and 15, that one's been completed earlier this year. The only major thing remaining for us is the bridge project on County Road 11. They set the beams on that job last week, so we're probably looking at the deck pour in a couple weeks, most likely, weather dependent, which so far hasn't been a problem, right? So completion of that's most likely late August for that bridge. And then seal coating is the last larger item left, and we pushed them off a little bit. We still got some patching left to do. That's most likely late July for seal coating. Otherwise, construction-wise, pretty much wrapped up. There is one more, as you know, the gap on County Road 15, south of the shop over CD 32. We're going to get that covered this year. We got one quote now for concrete paving. I'm waiting for one more quote. If those come in unfavorable, we'll look at bituminous options. We have contractors in the area this fall. So for sure, before winter, we'll get something covered on it.
Okay, yeah,
It'd be nice to put the concrete back rather than a temporary bituminous surface, but we'll have to see how the numbers come in.
Yeah, Morningside, I mean, I don't really care, I just want to make sure we get the dirt work, stay on
Yeah.
schedule, that's, weather always
And they're
scares me a
comfortable
little.
with that, and they can still fit in the timelines we prescribed, I believe, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
John, County Road 19, how are we doing on that one?
Yeah, 19 has been completed. Today they're putting, our guys are hydro seeding the residential driveways. We put topsoil around some of the driveways that needed after paving, and then that's getting seeded today and tomorrow, and that should be wrapped up. It's striped, everything, and the signs should be held down and everything, and open to traffic.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Mr. Young, you're up.
We are required to notify you at any time that you get sued, you have been sued. This is a title of a parcel of property in the city of Stewart. It looks like one person or one company owns it and another company has been paying the taxes on it. And I am working with both the attorney for the attorney for one party and the operational manager for the other party, and I think that we're pretty close to an agreement whereby we would be correcting our records, and they would resolve some of the issues about who paid whose taxes and stuff like that. So we aren't likely going to pay anything. We aren't going to turn it over to MCIT. We are going to be bringing it to you for approval of a settlement probably within the next 30 days.
Anything we need to do today?
Nothing that you need to do today, but I need to tell you about it.
Well, gee, thanks.
So it has to be in the minutes.
Well, I'm glad you told us. All right. All right, we'll move on to our calendars. Rich, you're up.
Okay. Since our last board meeting, we actually had our Health and Human Service meeting, a short meeting just before the last board meeting, tied with the Board of Appeals, and then a second Board of Appeals meeting also. Planning Commission, which we approved a number of items on the consent agenda today. UCAP meeting by Zoom. Once again, that one essentially aided a lot on Head Start programs in the southwest area and some of the transportation and regional transportation in the southwest area that they're going through. So wasn't real pertinent to our area, but good information on how they're accomplishing some things that we seem to struggle with a little bit at times. Prime West meeting by Zoom, once again, dealing with some of the things with the Department of Health that are regulations and so forth going on that are going to affect how Prime West continues. Along with a few phone calls and working with a few constituents that pretty much filled up my last 2.5 weeks of meetings. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, let's see, we had our Board of Equalizations. Also, Budget Committee met to have a discussion on department structure and some long-term options there. JD 64 met with Houston Engineering, Collins Township Board, our ditch inspector and several residents on the intersection in Collins Township were they're looking at doing some road improvements, and there was a lot of questions by landowners, and luckily Houston Engineering was able to come by and for a couple hours, a lot of discussion about realignment of water underneath that road as that project is kind of coming together. And also, last week we had a feedlot meeting, which will be continued in a couple weeks on an issue there.
All right. The Board of Appeals and Equalization's been covered. We had our workshop after the last board meeting. Several personnel matters, mostly done through phone call, all done through phone calls and emails. And then probably the difference that I had in the last couple weeks is I was part of the Health and Human Services Director's first interview. It went very well. It was very well organized. I think there were some very good candidates that came forward, and I'm excited to see where that lands. Ron?
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Since our last official board meeting on the 17th of June, we had the McLeod treatment program. New development there is we've, over the years, treated both boys and girls at McLeod treatment program. As of June 30th, we closed our our male occupant program. We were down to just one resident in the male program, and he wasn't going to be there very long, so we determined that we could close the male residents, and then we'll just serve female residents at McLeod Treatment Program. On the 18th, we had the Pioneer Land Library Joint Powers Board meeting via Zoom. Library is doing very well. The libraries are open for service, some curbside service and those types of things, but check with the local librarians because they are working and ready to provide services. On the 23rd, we continued the Board of Appeals and Equalization. And then on the 2nd of July, we had the Prime West Health meeting. Again, a Zoom meeting, or actually a conference call meeting. You get 40 or 50 participants. It's really tough to do a Zoom meeting, so we did conference call. And the cases of COVID among Prime West clients is very, very small. Financial impact is minimal at this point. I believe we're under $200,000 of total expenses for COVID cases in Prime West population. So that is going very well. Our enrollment in Prime West is going up. That we're cautious of because Department of Human Services has not been disenrolling people as they are qualified to move up out of the programs. So we're kind of gaining ground right now, but we're optimistic that, or pessimistic that it's not going to be all that rosy when all the dust settles. So that's where we are.
Very good. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since some things have been covered, Board of Equalization, Health and Human Services, on the 23rd, I attended, or most of these meetings are by Zoom, which aren't, I'm getting tired. I mean, it's getting long trying to get anything decided on Zoom meetings, but I did attend the Buffalo Creek Watershed board meeting. Again, most of the conversations there are farm drainage. Obviously, a lot of drainage coming from the west, coming this way, and then also some concerns around the city of Glencoe. I've had on-site meetings on JD8. That's our ditch running in my district here, running from Glencoe all the way up into Green Isle Township. We're trying to get some things closed. We're going a couple miles at a time, viewing them, doing punch lists, and trying to keep everybody as happy as we possibly can and move the contractors along so we can close this project down. I have at an HRA board meeting, there were 99 point something occupied, so our HRA is doing well. Obviously, with the COVID stuff, there's some different grants that have been kind of pushed away that we're looking at to apply for. I also had Mid-Minnesota Development Commission meeting. We had a full commission meeting, our annual meeting. There's also some economic development money because of COVID, quite a large amount of money. About the same as what we're dealing with here with our federal money in the county, and we're actually going to add 2-year temporary staff of 2 people to I hate to use the word allocate, but look at who is qualified for some of these monies, businessmen that have been affected by COVID, you'll be hearing more from me on that because we really need to follow up on that to try and shore up some of the damage that's been done these last few months. I also had a ATP District 8 Transportation Board meeting. There we were pretty much just brought up to speed on the different constructions that are going pretty much all on schedule, even though the COVID situation. We have a large road, and I can't remember the number, but it's southeast of Granite Falls. It's actually built on the side of a bluff, and the road is virtually sliding off the bluff. And that's going to be quite costly, no matter if they reroute or fix that road. I've also attended One Watershed, One Plan meeting for our Lower Minnesota, and that's also on schedule. It's a lot of formality. We're opening up a 60-day review. It started on July 9th. So those comments, that's also a commenting period for 60 days, and anybody with thoughts or ideas on the One Watershed, One Plan need to answer them in the 60 days. And yesterday I attended the SWCD board meeting, met a new staff member there, a young gentleman, and I'm excited about his qualifications and going forward. And that brings us to today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sheila, anything to add?
I have nothing to add. Thank
right.
you.
Move on to item A.
Item A, consider approval of collective bargaining agreement with American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, also known as AFSCME, AFL-CIO, local union number 185-0 for December 22nd, 2019 through December 17th, 2022. This is the agreement for a group of our employees at Health and Human Services in the Social Services unit.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Szymanski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wright. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item B, consider approval of collective bargaining agreement with Minnesota Nurses Association, also known as MNA, for January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2022. This is an initial collective bargaining agreement for our new unit, which is the public health unit of the Health and Human Services Department.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Szymanski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pohlmeyer. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sheila, can you help me understand the difference in the dates between the AFSCME contract and the Nurses Association contract?
That's because this is the initial collective bargaining agreement for that unit, so it would start at the beginning of the year. They didn't have a carryover. That's why.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good question. Any further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Item C, notification of special workshop to discuss CARES Act, the CRF funding, coronavirus relief funding, to be held on July 8th, 2020, tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. at the McLeod County Fairgrounds in the Agribition Building, 840 Century Avenue Southwest, Hutchinson, Minnesota. This is a meeting aimed towards communicating with our cities, townships, and the county. Item D, notification of board workshop to be held following the board meeting on July 21, 2020 at the Glencoe City Center, West Conference Room, 1107 11th Street East, Glencoe, Minnesota. And I'd also like to add that our workshop for today was moved to the senior room in the Glencoe City Center, right down the hallway. There are signs in the hallway due to the space available for today. Thank you.
Very good.
To the point on our agenda, open forum. Anyone wish to address the board? Press relations? Very good. Looking for a motion to recess till our next board meeting, July 21st, 2020, 9 a.m. at the Glencoe City Center.
Move to recess.
Motion by Commissioner Kruger,
Second.
second by Commissioner Szymanski. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.